Viridian, The Green Guide, written by Clouds, read by Distracted by Books. Chapter 23, Quirks. Izuku wasn't used to feeling proud of himself. He wasn't used to feeling loved either, but Mom had at least exposed him to the emotion. So it was understandable that the past week had been pretty strange. He had been doing virtual vigilantism every night, and he was getting so much better at hacking. He'd been working up to hacking into all the cameras in front of stores and stuff so that he had eyes everywhere. And it was so much fun. Not to mention that in some cases, it was actually faster to get heroes to crimes by hacking into their comms. He still couldn't wait to get his cast off so he could help the heroes fight, but maybe he'd have to spend a few days a week doing it this way, even after he healed. He'd cross that bridge when he got to it, but for now, he finally felt like he was doing something right for once in his life. Which brought him to the other unfamiliar emotion, feeling loved. He'd thought that maybe Eraserhead was just the exception and only missed him because of his habit of adopting strays. If he stopped to pet stray cats, of course he'd remember an annoying vigilante, so it only made sense that he'd miss Izuku because he was just more caring than normal. But that didn't seem to be the case. Every hero Izuku called seemed happy to hear his voice and said they missed him. They even asked if he was okay. No one asked if Izuku was okay. Not Kacha, not his teachers, not his classmates, but here were actual real-life pro heroes who seemed to care. Izuku knew that they only cared because they didn't know he was quirkless, so he couldn't help but feel a little bit guilty for lying to them. A part of him knew that he should just tell them so they didn't waste their time on him, and he felt so selfish for keeping his quirklessness to himself. But he didn't want to lose this feeling. He knew he didn't deserve to feel loved, but, well, it wasn't like he was actually lying to the heroes, right? He was just leaving out some info. That was part of the reason why he'd been dodging all the questions about what had forced him off the streets. If they knew he broke his arm or when he broke it, then they might be able to pull hospital records or something, and then they'd know who he was, and then they'd know he was quirkless, and they'd force him to stop, and they'd tell Mom, and she'd be so worried, and this was the problem with slow nights. Not that Izuku wasn't glad that no one was out committing crimes, but it left him too much time to get lost in his head. He switched between cameras again, looking for anything suspicious. There were a couple drunks, like there were every night, and some other people wandering about, but no one was doing anything criminal as far as he could see. The closest thing to a problem he could see was a group of teenagers smoking, but they weren't hurting anyone, even if they were loitering. He was about to switch cameras again and see if he could track down any of the heroes and see what they were doing when one of the teens jerked suddenly, slapping his neck. Within seconds, the others were batting at the air and slapping themselves as well. But beyond that, Izuku couldn't see anything wrong. He really wished the camera he was watching through had audio so he could tell if they were just hallucinating from whatever they were smoking or if they needed help. But that was one of the disadvantages of doing his vigilantism virtually. It wasn't until they started attacking one another with their powerful quirks that he called the heroes. He debated a minute about which hero would be best before deciding they'd probably appreciate backup for a fight this big. Eraser? Amplifier? Are you guys busy? Nope, Amplifier chirped. We're never too busy for you, cutie. Izuku blushed, but concentrated on the task at hand. The fight was going to start spreading soon if the way the teens' quirks were going out of control were any indication. What's up, problem child? Eraser asked. You normally only call one hero at a time. Oh, there's a fight on Hill Street. I don't know what started it, but yeah, it's starting to spread. I think the teens are all friends with each other, or at least that's how it seemed before they started suddenly fighting each other. All right, I'm on my way, kid. Me too. Thankfully, it only took a few minutes for the two to reach the scene. Amplifier got there first and started using her quirk to disorient the fighters, confusing them as she leaped from building to building to basically surround them in sound. Izuku kept up a running commentary on the quirks he could see being used as they waited for Eraser to arrive, pointing out any weaknesses that Amplifier might be able to exploit. All right, be careful of the guy with the backpack and try to stay behind him, but you already knew that since he's basically extending his tongue into a net. If he does try to go for you, stay close to the ground because I can't imagine the street tastes very good and it might buy you some time. Who else? Wait, did that guy just teleport? The villain in question suddenly appeared slightly behind and to the left of Amplifier, landing a hit to her back before disappearing again, only to reappear a few feet away. Well, that was strange. With the teleportation quirk, he could have just left as soon as Amplifier arrived. So why did he stick around? Did he want to fight Amplifier, or did he have a limit on how far he could go? The latter option seemed more likely because what teenager would willingly fight a pro hero? He watched the teleporter for another minute. He definitely kept Amplifier on her toes, but after that first time, she was able to get a glance of him in her peripheral vision due to his habit of popping up either slightly to the left or right of slightly behind her. That didn't make sense. Why wouldn't he appear directly behind her unless he couldn't? Amplifier, try and bait the tongue guy into blocking the teleporter's field of vision. He saw her nod, and within a few seconds, the teleporter's head was wrapped in his friend's tongue. Izuku shuddered. Gross. But as expected, he didn't teleport to get out, instead punching the muscle until it let him go as Eraser had finally arrived. Amplifier used that moment of distraction to knock out and restrain the tongue guy. Sorry I'm late, Eraser said gruffly as he took out one of the other fighters, a guy with a few too many eyes. No problem. Happy to have you, Izuku grinned. It was so cool to be able to watch them fight. Oh, and the teleporter has a vision-based quirk like you, Eraser. He can only teleport to places he can see, so try to blind him before you have to blink. Eraser didn't waste any time wrapping his capture weapon around the man's eyes and knocking him out. There were still a few other fighters still on their feet, and they immediately charged the heroes with a vengeance. Would have been nice to know these guys were hopped up on Trigger, Viridian. Eraser grunted. Izuku's eyes widened and he face-palmed, wincing as he accidentally hit himself in the face with his cast. Should have used the other hand. I'm so sorry. I should have realized that they shouldn't have all had such strong quirks, and then you would have been prepared, and then be nice to the kid, Eraser. Amplifier said as she punched someone in the face. It's not like he could tell they were high from all the way in his bedroom. Izuku shrunk in on himself. He was so useless. He couldn't do anything right. Yeah, he was doing the best he could with a broken arm, but Amplifier was right. There were things he missed because he wasn't actually down on the street. If the heroes lost this fight or got hurt, it would be all his fault because he told them to go even though he didn't have all the right info. Thankfully, the fight didn't last too much longer since between Eraser canceling their quirks and Amplifier disorienting them, the fighters didn't stand a chance. He heard Amplifier talking to Tsukachi over the comms and was about to cut his own connection when Eraser started talking. Viridian, he asked softly, are you still there? You went kind of quiet there for a minute. Izuku was tempted to not respond. Maybe then Eraser would assume that he left them alone like he should have been doing all along, rather than annoying them with his stupid marbles and stupid incomplete information. There was a sigh over the line. You're not annoying us, kid. I'm sorry if I gave you that idea during the fight. I was just frustrated because trigger cases have been going up recently. It's not your fault, problem child. I should have been able to tell. Izuku's face burned as his voice came out choked. Why did he have to start crying now, of all times? No, Eraser said firmly. Amplifier was right. There wasn't any way for you to tell they were on trigger just from the camera feed. It's enough of an accomplishment that you were able to see the feed in the first place, so stop beating yourself up, okay? Okay. Izuku wasn't convinced, but he didn't want Eraser to feel guilty just because he couldn't control his stupid emotions and his stupid tears and his stupid muttering and his stupid... Are you ever gonna tell us why you switched to online, kiddo? Amplifier asked. Izuku jumped. He'd forgotten he was still connected to her comm as well. Oh, just stuff and, life. He grimaced. Smooth. Thanks. Good night. He cut the link before either of them could say anything else. Izuku frowned and rubbed at his arm, which had become annoyingly itchy as it healed. Maybe you'd have to start researching problems beforehand so he had more information to give to the heroes. It probably wouldn't help with stuff like muggings, but maybe for drug busts? Maybe you could find some more information on Trigger to pay Eraser back for today. Izuku sighed and closed down his computer before crawling back into bed. He'd have to deal with that tomorrow. Izuku rubbed his head as he tried once again to concentrate on his history assignment, but it was no good. He'd woken up a few minutes before his alarm this morning, gasping as he remembered the fight when he'd actually met Eraserhead for the first time. That had also been a group of thugs minding their own business who suddenly went crazy and started fighting each other for no reason. And Eraser had mentioned they'd had Trigger in their systems. And there was also that thing with the flies. He hadn't thought much of it last night, but those teens had been swatting at the air almost like there were bugs or something trying to bite them. Izuku sighed and grabbed his phone. He wasn't being able to concentrate anyway, so he may as well take a walk to clear his head, right? And who knew? Maybe he'd find something where the fight broke out that would be able to help Eraser's investigation. He had to take a train to get to the corner where the teens had been smoking, and Izuku got plenty of weird looks considering that most kids his age were supposed to be at school in the middle of the afternoon. But Izuku ignored them, and most people just shrugged and continued on with their days. Izuku wasn't surprised. People always looked away from him. He just wasn't interesting enough to merit paying attention to. He was used to being ignored. The corner looked different in daylight, and Izuku looked up until he saw the camera he'd hacked into the night before. It was weird seeing the street from this angle, but a good kind of weird, and it made Izuku smile slightly before he went back to looking around for clues. He didn't really know what he was looking for. After all, if there were insects or mosquitoes or something, they'd be long gone by now, but a metallic glint caught Izuku's eye, and he looked around briefly before walking toward it and kneeling down. He sucked in a harsh breath as he saw the crushed corpse of a tiny robotic bee, a cracked glass cylinder acting as its abdomen. The guy that slapped his neck must have managed to damage it enough that it couldn't fly away, and the abdomen container could easily hold a tiny dose of Trigger, which would explain why Izuku had never seen either group shoot up. Izuku grabbed a small Ziploc from his bag. It had held carrots at one point, and picked up the bee, hoping there was enough of it left for him to hack into, then started heading back home. He still had homework to finish after all. End of chapter.